Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today is Monday, March 7, 2022, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Congressman Hank Johnson sends a letter to the President Joe Biden saying do more to help Black-owned media when it comes to federal advertising dollars. We will talk with the Georgia Congressman in our Where's Our Money segment. Also, folks, we were in Selma yesterday for the 57th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, along with Vice President Kamala Harris. I have an exclusive interview with her. We'll also hear from those who spoke there as well about the fierce urgency of now when it comes to voting rights and freedom. A black woman in Texas has her leg broken by a cop for trespassing in an Oklahoma hotel. She was a registered guest. She and her attorney will join us on the show. Also, folks, on today's show, Fit Live Win segment, yoga with an African twist. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
Been frozen out.
Facing an extinction level event.
We don't fight this fight right now, you're not going to have Black-owned media. Folks, we have been talking for years about the lack of funding that Black-owned media is receiving from the advertising industry. But it's not just the general market. It's also the federal government. Folks, $322 billion is spent every single year on advertising in the United States. On the general market, run by largely these white advertising companies, Black-owned media gets anywhere from 0.5 to 1%. Now, you would think we would be doing better when it comes to the federal government, when the fact of the matter is that is not the case. The General Accounting Office did a study at the behest of Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton in 2018. It showed that over a 5-year period, $5 billion was spent by the federal government. Black-owned media got $51 million out of the $5 billion. Well, last year when we were in Tulsa for the 100th anniversary of the race riots, I was talking about this very issue with members of Congress, Barbara Lee and Hank Johnson, and Representative Johnson said, let's do something about that. And so his staff has been working on this over the last 9 months. They put out this letter, sent it to President Joe Biden, asking them to take advantage of an executive order that President Bill Clinton signed in when he was president called Executive Order 13170. He'll tell us more about this. But one of the things that we saw is that Black-owned media did not get our fair share of dollars when it came to census money or COVID money. Joining us right now is Congressman Johnson from Georgia. Congressman, glad to have you on the show. You know, when we were talking about this in Tulsa, when you went back and got with your staff, I mean, y'all saw the stark difference when it comes to the dollars. And here we stand in 2022. Last year, President Biden talked about race and equity. We met with Susan Rice about this very issue in the first 60 days they were in the White House. And this continues to be an issue that Black-owned media faces.
Well, I tell you, Roland, when we were out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you were out there covering what was going on as we commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, a story that has been withheld from us and withheld from everyone in this country since it happened. You were out there covering it along with other Black-owned media. And you mentioned to me the fact that, out of all of the spending that the federal government is doing, that Black media and advertising companies are getting 1% of that money. We're talking billions of dollars being spent by our federal government. It was a stark reminder of the fact that systemic racism exists in this country. That was just a classic example of systemic racism in the dealings of the federal government insofar as spending with Black-owned firms is concerned. And so, having been awakened to that reality, as we talked amongst ourselves, Roland, as we had a lot of fun about fraternities and which fraternity was the greatest fraternity, we were still having serious discussions about how we can bring equity into this situation for our people. 100 years after Tulsa, and we're being massacred in terms of spending of federal dollars, that's something that has to come to an end. So Barbara Lee, Eleanor Holmes Norton, and myself came together. And as a result of our efforts, we have sent a letter to the administration. 38 people signed on to that letter. And that letter is demanding that we get some information about the spending on the CARES Act money, spending on the COVID relief funds from the American Rescue Plan, and we want to know. We want the administration, and we want America to see for themselves the disparity in equity that we are experiencing with this federal dollars being spent for advertising in our communities. We don't. People like you, Roland, who are out here covering our issues, and you know how to reach us, you're not getting the money.
I'll give you a perfect example. Let's just bring up Tulsa for instance. Here's what people don't realize. There was no one sponsoring us to go to Tulsa to cover that. There was no company, there was no group. It cost me about $25,000. We spent 6 days in Tulsa. So to drive our Sprinter down, our driver, security, the staff, hotels, per diem, all of those things, that's $25,000. Yesterday, I was on Air Force 2 with Vice President Kamala Harris covering Selma, okay? Now, people don't realize when you fly on Air Force 2, we have to pay the equivalent of a first-class ticket.
That's like, that's a big expense, Roland.
Right. Yesterday, 1,600. I'm gonna give you the number.
That's like a charter flight.
It was 1,000. I need everybody listening. It was 1,000. I'm gonna be charged $1,632. In addition to the cost of the meals, it wasn't like it was a major meal, but in addition to the meals. And so there are other costs. So it's probably going to cost me around $2,000 to make that trip. When we talk about most Black-owned media, we can't do that every week. We can't do that. And so guess what happens? We don't cover it. Yesterday, not one major network, Congressman, covered the entire Selma event. Some people only carried her speech. On the Black Start Network, we covered the entire event, all 17 speeches, including the walk across the bridge. That's why when we get frozen out of the dollars, we can't cover this kind of stuff.
And you know what, Roland, when people talk about the rise in crime and they're afraid of the black males and what is going on, nobody has any hope about the future. Well, the story that mainstream media tells us about ourselves teaches us to hate ourselves, to not value our own lives. And we don't get the story about what our forefathers have done. And so we don't get the images that you, as a Black man, would project to us, being the owner of a media outlet. And so when we snuff out the ability of people like you to cover us, then we end up with the kinds of results that we're seeing on the streets of this nation, across the nation. And so at the same time, Roland, if you were being adequately used as a source to get information out by the federal government, if you were able to get honest information out to people, you would be able to employ some of these Black men who are running around out here who don't have anything,
Precisely.
no hope about the future.
Precisely.
And so this is a holistic issue that we're dealing with. It is the epitome of systemic racism. And show me the money. That's what it's all about.
And here's the deal, Congressman, and this is the thing here. It's not only show me specifically, because here's what they're doing. They're sending the money to Black targeted media. That's not Black owned. Look, when it comes to the digital side, they send the money to Complex. BuzzFeed owns them. They're sending it to BET. That's going to Viacom, CBS. They're sending it to white-owned media companies. And then, let me tell you what they did. We had Congressman Stephen Horsford on this show talking about the census money. He was over the census task force for the CBC. Young and Rubicam, who had the contract, told him point blank they were not taking out any census ads in any print publications with a circulation of 50,000 or less. That is 98% of all Black newspapers. And so they couldn't even get census dollars. Now, you should take out ads everywhere because you're trying to count everybody, but no, they didn't want to do it. I applied on their portal. 4 months, they totally ignored us. I had to call them out on the show. And so what we're seeing is we tried when it came to COVID money. Forrest Marsh, the ad agency that got the big contract, talked to them, sent the proposal, came back, oh, sorry, all the money has been spent. But I'm seeing ads run left and right. Yet we were one of the most impacted groups when it came to COVID. And so this happens. And so, Congressman, they can't even use a lie because they tried it. They can't use a lie, well, Roland, you don't have the numbers. Got the numbers. They can't say you don't have the reach. Got the reach. We meet all of the deals, but they systematically ignore Black-owned media. And yeah, Urban One might get some money, maybe a couple of other Black outlets. They might call Essence. I'm talking about the pool has to be larger.
Yes, it does. You have to go after this thing on a micro level. There's no reason at all to exclude the smaller entities that are more nimble and are closer to the people. There's no need to exclude them because of your administrative issues. Go ahead and open up a pot of money for the smaller guys to get in there and compete and win those dollars. Do for your mid-sized companies and do something for your larger companies. But we, as a people, have to have our businesses involved on every level. And the federal government, quite frankly, Roland, owes this to us. When you talk about reparation, folks get scared. Folks don't want to hear about that. But it is something that this nation owes to us as a people. And the first thing that they have to do is to recognize the truth of our reality living in America today, with the vestiges of slavery and discrimination still at work in our lives 24/7 on a granular level. The majority community has to understand that, has to be confronted with that reality, and has to accept that reality. And the truth hurts, but you'll never have freedom and prosperity in this country for all unless you confront the truth.
Yep.
And that is what we're doing. We had a meeting today, a group of us in the CBC Executive Board, under the leadership of our brilliant chairwoman, Joyce Beatty, we sat down and spoke with the president and his advisors about a lot of issues, including this issue of media and advertising companies black media and advertising companies being cut out of the flow of federal revenues. We talked about that. We talked about the president reinstating President Clinton's executive order that you referred to as Executive Order 13170, which mandated the inclusion of minority business enterprises. And when Republicans took office, they rescinded the executive order, only for it to be put back in place by President Obama and then rescinded again by Trump. And now it's time for President Biden to reinstate that executive order, but to actually go further, Roland, because we know all of the tricks that have been used historically to funnel money into the hands of the major firms and wink at them and say that you are required to spend this money with black-owned firms, and then what they do is spend it with white-owned firms that seemingly or supposedly are supposed to be getting the word out to the black firms and then to the black people, and then the message, Roland, doesn't get out because they don't know how to get to us.
Precisely.
They don't speak to us in the way that we like to be spoken to, and they don't give it to us in the ways that we like to have it. And so those are things, it's no secret. They just are used to doing business for the mainstream and don't really care to learn about how we receive our information. So therefore, we suffer and they suffer too, Roland, because we're all in the same boat together.
Look, I know you have to go vote, but the reason I'm giving people numbers so they understand. To everybody who's watching and listening, there is not a single black-owned media company that has a correspondent that covers Congress. So when the CBC comes out of their weekly meeting on Wednesday and the media is out there, there is not a single person from black-owned media. At the White House, Ebony McMorris was with American Urban Radio Network. April Ryan works for Byron Allen's The Griot. That's it at the White House. And I said this to Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and I said to numerous other members, with $1 billion being spent, imagine if black-owned media got 10% of the billion, that means that black-owned media would get $100 million. Let's say I got 2%. Let's say I got $2 million of the $100 million, okay? That's 2%. That's 2%. Let's just say 2% of the $100 million. Congressman, in 60 days, I could have 3 people hired, 3 African-Americans hired to cover the CBC. And so when you talk about, people say, man, I don't know what the CBC doing, because white media don't cover the CBC. They don't cover the issues because we simply can't afford to pay somebody $80,000 to $100,000 to solely cover Congress. We simply don't have the money because the advertising agencies and the companies who make excuses will not spend the dollars. And so, as Frederick Douglass said, we ain't got no choice but to call them out.
Roland,
Final word, go ahead.
When the little children are on the set watching you handle your business in a professional way, it gives them an idea that, hey, I can do that one day. I'd like to do that.
Not just do it, I can own it.
Yeah, that's right.
I can own it.
If they can see it, they can be it. But if they don't see it, then we end up lost in the desert, in the darkness. That's where our children are today. That's why we're suffering from the crime that is out there. Let's all wake up, Roland, realize and deal honestly with the facts, and then let's move forward with a plan to repair the damage that we have been sustaining for the last 401 years since we've been in this country, 402 years.
Well, look, I hope after y'all meeting, the White House moves on this, is aggressive with this, reinstates Executive Order 13170. Congressman Hank Johnson, we appreciate it. We're going to keep covering
Roland,
this. Yes, sir.
Can I tell your audience, we're gonna be on Rep Hank Johnson on my Instagram page. You and I on Saturday, I believe it's 4:00. So y'all tune in for that. We're gonna have some more discussion.
Yes,
about
sir.
This and other issues.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you so very much for your leadership on this.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to go to my panel, Dr. Julian Malvo, Dean of the College of Ethics Studies at California State University in Los Angeles. Dr. Omokongo Dabinga, Professorial Lecturer, School of International Service at American University. Reverend Jeff Carr, founder of the Infinity Fellowship in Nashville. You heard Congressman Johnson there talk about that letter. Here's what's very interesting about the letter he's talking about, Julian. There are 56 members of the Congressional Black Caucus. 38 signed the letter. Now, again, what I want people to understand is that as we talk about this issue, as we talk about in terms of what's get covered, what doesn't get covered, Julian, you know, it comes down to the money. It's always the money in America. And as somebody who I have, and I need people to understand, because see, some of y'all listen to these old dumb, ignorant folk who call themselves new black media. I need people to understand who y'all listening to. The first time I got paid in media was a black newspaper, the Houston Defender. When the white newspaper in Austin and Fort Worth would not let me write columns, I then wrote columns for the Houston Defender. I then later became news director of KKDA Radio, which was a black targeted radio station in Dallas. Worked for the Dallas Examiner, black-owned newspaper. Ran the Dallas Weekly, black-owned newspaper. Ran the Houston Defender, black-owned newspaper. Went back to Dallas, ran Tom Jones' BlackAmericanWeb.com, black website. Ran the Chicago Defender as executive editor and general manager, black-owned newspaper. Launched the first black news source audio podcast and video podcast 2005 and 2006. News editor, black-owned Savoy magazine owned by Vanguard Media. Did an election special in 2000 for major broadcasting cable network, black-owned company. TV One, black-owned. Okay? I can go, folks, what I'm trying to lay out, I have been doing this in black-owned media, and every place I have been at, it has been the same problem for 20-plus years. White ad agencies not returning our phone calls, not giving us allocation, giving us excuses, and then the companies say, well, it's up to the agency. The agency goes, well, it's up to the company. It's the game that's constantly being played. And so they set up a system, Julian, where they go, oh, here are the metrics. You don't meet our metrics. Then I'm gonna give y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and name it. Last year, Julian, we tried JP Morgan Chase. I ain't got no problem calling names because I'm trying to show people how the game is being run on us. They did this big Juneteenth deal. We'll be a part of the deal. Wasn't a lot of money. They came back and said, well, they turned you down because JP Morgan said, well, if his show's on YouTube, why don't we just buy the ads straight with YouTube? Well, first of all, if you buy straight with YouTube, you ain't supporting black-owned media. Secondly, YouTube is not going to create content that's specific to black people. They're just going to run the ad. The agency came back to me and told me, you know, it'd be really better if you owned your own platform. Well, guess what? If you own the platform, they're going to say it's too small. So I launched Black Star Network in September. But guess what? We're almost at 40,000 downloads. They will tell me, audience too small. That's how they play the game, Julian.
That's predatory capitalism and racism combined. You're absolutely right, Roland. First of all, let me commend you because you really have been there, as you said, as you outlined your career with black media. And, you know, I've been writing for the San Francisco Sun-Reporter since I could almost hold a pen. I mean, we've all had our experiences with black media, and we know what happens. There's some things they just can't do because they don't have the dollars. Many of us who write columns for the NMPA Black Press don't get paid. We write because we want to communicate.
Hold up, let me say it again. They writing for free. You're writing for free.
Every week, free column, absolutely. the economics, Congressman Johnson really had it right in the letter that he sent to President Biden is an important letter that I hope he pays attention to. I hope when you were chatting up Kamala on the private plane, the Air Force Two
I
plane.
mentioned it to her. Yes, I did.
Good, because she needs to hear it, and this is something that she needs to be an advocate for. The issue is that these folks don't want us to be informed. And there are, I remember years ago, the San Francisco Chronicle, actually, at the time, I was doing some writing for them and some for the Sun Reporter, and they would not cover a piece on Black folk and AIDS. This was in the 80s. Y'all know I'm old. So anyway, they would not do a piece. A brother who was writing for the Chronicle, Perry Lang, said to me, "Can you get this in the Sun Report?" I said, "Oh, heck yeah, we could do that. That's easy." And he wrote a really great piece. Of course, they didn't pay him, but he wanted to get the information out there. And the fact is that they don't want us to have certain information, like Tulsa, buried, like Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898, buried, like the lynchings, buried. They do not want us to know. And because they don't want us to know, it takes folks like you, Roland Martin. And I just shouted you out the other day because it takes folks like you to lift up the story. This weekend, the majority press has started talking about the majority electronic has started talking about the Black folks, the Africans who are being ill-treated in Ukraine. But you talked about it last week, Monday. At that time, nobody else had talked about it. And you said, and we all said, Biden and those cannot give those people relief unless they are willing to deal with that with fairness. So there is a slice and a piece and a place for Black-owned media. It's so very important. And I think that those of our people who want to be haterators, they need to just go someplace and sit down. And when you mention the 38 signatures and there are 55 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, that is only proof positive that everybody Brown ain't down. Because I do not understand how every member of the CBC did not sign that. I mean, it's just shameful. But then again, it took Brother Conyers how long before the whole CBC wouldn't sign H.R. 40 until, Sheila Jackson-Lee got it and started whipping her colleagues into shape. And now we have 215 co-sponsors. But initially, there were Black folks who wouldn't sign it. Black members of Congress play Mr. Bojangles too often with white people. They dancing, shilly-shallying, as opposed to just coming out and say, "I am for Black people." I don't care if your district is not majority Black. You Black.
It comes to, but look, when you see 1%, Omakongo is 1%. And the thing that I need people to understand, and I'm putting this stuff out here because y'all, I think people go, "Oh man, yeah, I hear y'all saying this." No, seriously, Henry, take a wide shot. Folks, understand, that TV right there, $2,500, $3,000. We got 5 of them. The lighting package that you see in this studio is $75,000. $75,000. Green screen, a couple of thousand. The artwork you're seeing in here, around $25,000. Those murals that you're seeing on these walls, those are almost $500 each. Folks, I'm going through. There are 10 robotic cameras that you're seeing right now. You're seeing me talk right now. Those robotic cameras are $3,000 each. There's a C300 that's sitting right here, okay, which is a top-of-the-line camera. The body alone is $9,000. Put in the lenses, it goes to $20,000. We have 5 of them. What I'm trying to lay out to y'all, because then I get these ignorant Negroes, "Oh, you always begging the white man for money." Guess what? Your ass eating their food. You buying their cars, you shopping at their stores. Why should there not be a return on investment when it comes to what we're getting? We are taxpayers. And if you're telling me that we pay taxes and $1 billion is being spent on advertising and 1% is coming to Black-owned media and I'm supposed to be happy and satisfied, damn that.
And when we're buying their iPhones and Androids and Xboxes and PlayStations, and the list goes on. And the beauty about what you're doing, Roland, is you're letting people know that we deserve this. It's not about handouts. It's about we put so much money into building this economy, and at the end of the day, some of that needs to be coming back to us. And nobody has broken down the importance of Black-owned media versus Black-targeted media better than you have. And that story you just laid out about how we don't have any Black-owned media out there covering Congress or the White House, and people come out there like that after these sessions, This is extremely important because people have to understand that right now, when we've been talking about the economics of it, but going back to the politics of it as well, Democrats are losing at messaging right now to the Republicans. And as Joe Madison
Hold
always
on.
said,
Let's not even talk about how we don't get money from the political advertising, folks. The Democrats are going to spend $1 billion+ this year, and I'm telling you, most of it ain't going to go to black-owned media. Go ahead.
absolutely, and that's my point, right? You know, it's like when Joe Madison talks about when you see something in black-owned media, you know it's for you. And we know that Republicans are out there beating Democrats on messaging as it relates to getting to our community. And so if Democrats want to be serious about this is a no-brainer. You have to get out there and make sure you target the money towards us because we're going to get it where it needs to go. I'm so happy that you did the interview with Vice President Harris that we're going to see later. How often have we talked about that day after day, week after week? Come to us if you want to get the message out. These other guys who are targeting black media, they don't know how to get the messages out. And furthermore, Roland, they don't care about making sure they get the message out.
Hold on. Let me just go ahead. Let me go ahead and say, Complex gets most of the digital money. Complex was not in Selma yesterday. BET gets a lot of that money. BET was not there yesterday. And let me go ahead and say it. Hey, Urban One, as TV One, I worked there. It's all good. Radio One, I ain't see, wasn't nobody on TV One there as well. So look, I'm not even just talking about black targeted, black owned. We gotta be present covering our stuff. And so here's what I need everybody to understand, Jeff. Look, I sent that letter from Johnson to all these other black-owned media people. And look, I have said to all of these people, we should be amplifying his letter, amplifying this story, and we do the same thing conservative media does, Jeff. When one of us does this, let's amplify each other. I ain't got no problem calling names. I sent this email to Londale. No, do not show email. Do not show that. Take it off. I don't want emails being shown. I'm going to read it. I said to Londale McMillan at The Source. I sent to Paula Madison at the Africa Channel. I sent to Detavio Samuels and Diddy at Revolt. Michelle G at Ebony. Morgan DeBond at Blavity. Alfred Liggins at Urban One. I sent it to Butch Graves at Black Enterprise. I sent it to Byron Allen. I sent it to Carol H. Williams, the Carol H. Williams Agency. I sent it to Kathy Hughes at Urban One. Sent it to Don Jackson. I sent it to Rich Dennis at Essence. I sent it to Kevin Perry with KVSP. I sent it to Munson Steed. I sent it to Ice Cube. I sent it to Sheila Eldridge. I sent it to also my man Todd Brown and also Black Ad Agency Sherman Wright and Terrell Whitley. What I'm trying to get people, Jeff, to understand, all these black celebrities, y'all keep retweeting something Don Lemon say, or something Joanne Reed say, or something you see on Good Morning America. If we use our social media power and amplify each other, then we can do the exact same thing that conservative media does, and that's how their stories go to the top 10 of Facebook. But we got to give a damn enough to focus on the money. The money.
Yes, indeed. And Roland, you're doing the work. We're all doing the work here. There's a scripture that said, what does it profit a man to gain the world but lose its soul? Black media is the soul of Black America. If you do a survey of Black media personalities who are prominent, I guarantee you at some point, especially when they were young, they were working at some small Black publication, some small radio station. I started in 1990, 22 years old, with the brilliant late Sam Howard, who owned 1470 WVOL. There would be no Oprah Winfrey without her starting in that same studio and getting an opportunity to be on the radio. I walked the streets of Jefferson Street for 11 years, getting advertisement from small Black business to publish a 10,000 issue a week newspaper called The Third Eye, starting at 23 years old. It was the lifeblood. Advertising is the lifeblood. We get to tell our stories, but tell you what, it's not free. I so appreciate that you gave us a tour and you told people how much this costs. I see this in ministry too. People will say, hey, you need a better microphone. I said, did you put something in the offering plate?
Boom.
Or are you going to send a microphone? So when it comes down to it, we have to invest in ourselves. And as Dr. Malvo says, Dr. Debinga says, we are coming together now in a whole new way, because now we're shutting up the people who ask us to justify common sense. You got a studio. We got a network. We have the eyes. We have the downloads. This issue is even deeper than what we're talking about when we say support Black media and advertisers. This is our money. This is tax dollars we're talking about.
Yep.
We pay taxes. And when we pay taxes, we have a right to see ourselves and we have a right to benefit from those taxes. When you're talking about $5 billion, $51 million, it's just a drop in the bucket.
And that's the federal government now.
And that's the federal government.
Annually,
Just the federal
the
government.
industry spends $322 billion a year. We get 0.5%. Listen, White House.
How about it?
White House is real simple. I'm gonna give y'all a week. And what's gonna happen is,
I love it.
the phone number's gonna go out.
Hey, Roland, can I interrupt and give you a saying to share with them?
Go ahead.
You're saying, I'm gonna give you a theme to you.
Real quick.
No taxation without representation.
Yo, that's it. And I'm telling you, all folks holler, black agenda. Reinstate that executive order 13170 and audit every single federal agency to add contracts to see who the money went to. That needs to happen. So look, White House, I'm looking for a response. I've been talking to y'all now 15 months. Don't say you just heard. Am I clear? Going to a break. We come back. We're going to talk with an Oklahoma woman, a Texas woman, with her leg broken in Oklahoma at a hotel where she was a paid guest. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Back in a moment.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm LD Barge.
Hey, yo, Peace World, what's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
A Texas woman is now suing a city in Oklahoma after being violently slammed by police officers, breaking her leg. Candace Jefferson was visiting her sick grandmother in Oklahoma when she was accused of trespassing in a hotel where she was a registered guest. She spent a night in jail and suffered from a host of physical and mental problems from the encounter with the Dale City Police Department. Candace Jefferson and her civil rights attorney and founder of Justice for Greenwood Project, Damario Solomon-Simmons, they join us right now. I'm glad to have both of you here. Candace, first of all, when did this take place?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
When did this take place?
It was May 18th, but in the middle of the night, so it ended up being May 19th, which was actually around 3 to 4 days before George Floyd was killed.
So walk us through what happened. Were you just walking down the hall? Were you in the room? Were you in the lobby? What happened?
Originally, we were in the room. with our kids, and we were all in my godbrother's room, and we were told that we were being too loud. So me, my godbrother, and my nephew and my cousins, we went outside to talk. So we went to accommodate the hotel clerk by going outside in the front. And then the next thing you know, the police pulled up.
So the police pull up, and then what happens?
He was like, hey, you come here. And I asked him, was I being detained? He told me, no, I wasn't, but I had to get off the property. And so I did ask him 2 or 3 times first if I was being detained when he asked me to come here. He kept telling me no. So when I tried to leave to go get my kids because they were upstairs asleep, he told me I had to get off the property, and I said I would go get an attorney.
Hold up, he told you to get off the property, but you got a room key.
I did.
Right. Did he bother to go to the front desk?
No, and my kids were upstairs asleep.
Damario, I'm trying to understand here because, okay, if you roll up and if you suspect someone of trespassing, I mean, isn't there a process? You might start with the front desk. Hey, first of all, was the cop just driving around, or did someone call?
That's the thing, Roland, and that's why we were actually suing both the hotel and the Dale City Police Department, because the hotel actually called the police and said that she was trespassing. She no longer had a right to be there, which was totally false.
Wait. The hotel said she was trespassing?
Yes, the hotel says she needed to leave the premises because she had allegedly violated some unwritten rules about that they couldn't be talking. And they said that they were being too loud. And so the hotel said that she was no longer allowed to be there, actually called the police. The police show up, they go to Candace, and as Candace stated, and this is all in the police reports. This is not something we're making up. This is actual factual, where the officer even states himself that when Candace said, am I detained? Which is what we teach our people to do. And he said, no. So she said, okay, I'm gonna go to my lawyer's room, who is her sister. And she started going to the lawyer's room, and you can see he puts his hand on down towards his waist. She's very afraid. And then he treats her like a violent, armed felony criminal who's burglarized and is gonna cause some problems to people. And let's see, you see on this video, Roland, that this officer is an African-American. He's Black. So as the sister said earlier, just because you're brown don't mean you down. And in fact, the clerk was African-American also. Calling the police on Black people for these unnecessary police contacts, these people like Candace, a mother of 6, a student, a worker, a loving family member with a broken knee, a broken leg. She's still in pain. She's still having PTSD syndrome. She's still going to actual therapy. This was totally, completely unnecessary.
I mean, this is it. So what was the response from the police department? What has been the response from the hotel?
Well, the hotel said that they didn't do anything wrong, and the police department feels the same exact way. And that's why I tell your listeners right now, if they want to call the Dale City, Oklahoma city manager, the number is 405-677-5741. That's 405-677-5741. Tell them to do the right thing as it relates to Candace and her children, and also to discipline this officer. His name is Ronald Neal. Again, that officer's name is Ronald Neal. To our knowledge, he hasn't faced any sort of discipline for slamming Candace down to the floor in such a violent manner. And we see this all over the country, but particularly for Black women who are being violated by police officers without any accountability. But I'm so proud that we get an opportunity to represent and fight for Candace and her beautiful children. We hope and fight for them to get accountability and justice against Dale City and Spring Hill hotels.
Unbelievable. Candace, we sorry that you had to endure that. We thank you for joining us, sharing your story with us. And Damario, certainly keep us abreast of how this case moves forward.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Roland. Appreciate everything you do. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks a bunch. All right, folks, some breaking news. The Supreme Court will not stand in the way of lower court rulings where the Republicans are angry when it comes to gerrymandering. This is out of North Carolina and Pennsylvania. This is what Politico writes. The twin orders handed down Monday afternoon are short-term losses for the GOP, but they left open the possibility that at least some of the Republican-appointed justices would embrace a once fringe legal theory that could drastically reshape the rules under which federal elections are run in some states. What we saw take place here on Macongo was that the Republicans wanted to severely gerrymander these districts to take advantage of their political power, but they lost in the state courts. In fact, they've been losing in a number of courts. There are a consortium of groups that have been fighting this battle. NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, Mark Elias and his law firm, Black Voters Matter has been one of the parties as well. And they have been losing in Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. They've been losing in Kansas as well. And so what we are seeing, again, this is what happens when you actually fight. You don't give up. You fight against these sort of actions. And it's potentially, by them stopping Republicans from severely gerrymandering, Democrats could actually hold on to the U.S. House when it looked like the Republicans were going to gerrymander themselves into majority.
Absolutely. And like you said, the fight is continuous. And when we talk about 57-year anniversary with Selma and the like, this is what we have been part of historically. Every single district, every single county, if we don't fight for it, we are going to lose it. We have to remember, and we saw this when the Voting Rights Act was gutted in 2013, that whatever we don't fight to maintain, we are going to lose. The Republicans only care about maintaining power in every way, shape, and form. And so we have to stay educated, we have to stay active, we have to stay out there in these streets, and we have to stay in these courts. That was one of the main reasons so many of us came out against Trump, was because we couldn't give him access to the Supreme Court, and he got 3 justices. And with all of that, we're still fighting. And this is also more reason why we need to not give up on getting the federal voting rights legislation passed, the John Lewis bill. We have to do this because they're never going to stop. And Eric Holder, like you said, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, they are not giving up, and they need our continued support. And we need to keep up in speaking against this. Not only it's important to get out there and protest and march, that's really important, but we got to keep fighting in the courts as well. Otherwise, it's all going to be for naught. So I commend all of the organizations that have been fighting on this, and I commend you, Roland, for keeping this in the forefront.
Here's what's interesting here, Jeff, and people need to be very well aware. Justice Samuel Alito, actually, this is what the article says. He wrote that he found compelling Republicans' claim that the state courts have no business interfering in congressional redistricting. Okay, here's what's so crazy here. Congress can actually pass laws that deal with gerrymandering. Now, a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that they had no place in partisan gerrymandering. Alito says, oh, the state courts have no role. So these conservatives, everybody listen to me, these conservatives are arguing that only the state legislature can impact how districts are drawn. What they're saying is no court can determine if we're violating the law. Well, here's the other deal. What 2 justices agree with Alito? Neil Gorsuch and, of course, Clarence Thomas.
Surprise, surprise.
Of course, Clarence Thomas. And so, yeah, if y'all even remotely think I support putting a statue of Clarence Thomas up in Georgia, hell no. Hell no.
You might support putting a statue upside down in Georgia because that's where Clarence Thomas ends up voting most of the time. We're seeing this across the nation. Here in Tennessee, I'm in the capital city of Nashville, Tennessee, one of the most populous cities across the entire state. It is the most populous city now when you look at the metropolitan statistical area. And recently, House Republicans who have a supermajority in Tennessee voted to carve up Congressman Jim Cooper's district, the 5th congressional district, which was solidly Democratic. Nashville went to Joe Biden by 64.5%, I believe, in the last election, carved up one city into 3 separate districts. So basically created this map that looks absolutely insane to decentralize Democratic power. Thanks and shout out to the ACLU, to everyone who is bringing this to court now, because now this is working through the courts in the state of Tennessee.
Now, hold up. Let everybody know. There are what? Only 2 Democrats in the whole state.
Yes, indeed.
There are only 2 Democrats in Congress from Tennessee. One from Nashville, one from Memphis.
Yes.
I think the Republicans have, how many, is it 10 members of Congress? They have 9.
I think it's 10, but they'll add 2 more.
Y'all, they got an 8-2 advantage.
Yes.
They like, damn that, we want 9-1. And they can figure out how to carve up Memphis. Hell, they'll make it 10-0.
Oh, and that's what's happening. But that's why it's important that we fight. It's why we get this conversation out here. It's why the Supreme Court opportunity gives us an opportunity to now focus on making sure that we don't reinforce white minority rule. And that's what they're going for, and that's what's happening here.
And I'm a Congo to all people out there. Again, I hear all these old loudmouth Negroes, you all should talk about support the Democratic Party. Oh, y'all, let me explain something to you. Again, let me lay it out again. Right now is 50-50 in the U.S. Senate. Right now is 50-50. You've got elections coming up. Republicans are targeting Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. If Democrats hold on to those seats, why is it important? Republicans not to win in Florida, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio. That's 5 seats. Let's say Republicans keep Florida and Ohio. Democrats win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and then North Carolina. That means the U.S. Senate will be 53-47. That means that Senators Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin don't hold the whole Senate hostage. Now, all y'all sitting here watching, again, who don't know shit about politics because you ignored civics when your ass was in school growing up. If the Republicans control the Senate, they could block any, listen to me clearly, let me talk as slow as possible for some of y'all who don't know a damn thing about what I'm talking about. If the Republicans control the United States Senate, that means that anybody who Joe Biden wants to appoint to a position in government must be confirmed by Republicans. Right now, the Republicans are holding up more than 100 of his appointees. That means they control federal judges. That means the very people who are ruling on civil rights cases, who are ruling on voting cases, who rule on federal police consent decrees, they will control who gets on. So y'all can sit here and tell me I shouldn't be saying let the Democrat. No, what I'm saying is we should be putting pressure on those Democrats running to say, do you support our agenda? Do you support our issues? Where do you stand? Because we know exactly where the Republican candidates stand. And when a William Barr can go on his book tour and talk about how Donald Trump is the reason for January 6th and talk about the incompetence of Donald Trump and then get asked, would you vote for Donald Trump if he is a nominee in 2024? And Bill Barr said yes. That's all you need to know about today's Republican Party. There ain't a Republican in America who's a MAGA supporter or a Trump supporter who deserves to be in office.
Period, bottom line. Period, bottom line. And this is where sophistication comes in as it relates to the political process. So much of what we're seeing right now with this redistricting and gerrymandering, if we were able to get the voting rights legislation passed, these things will start to go into effect this year to help us get some of the protections we need going into the midterm elections right now. We need to make Manchin and Sinema completely obsolete right now, because if we don't do that, like you said, the Republicans getting with the Senate over 100 people who have their confirmation held up, we are going to continue to go backwards. My oldest child is 15 years old. She has lost more rights since she was born in the last 15 years because of the shenanigans that Republicans are playing to try to oppress us at every single turn. She's going to be voting in 3 years. But what rights is she going to have if we don't fight to keep them? And so, like you said, if we can get it to 53 seats, there is so much on this agenda that we can get past. But we also, like you said, have to make sure we're keeping pressure on the Democrats, because some of them, kind of agreed with Manchin on some of these things about the filibuster and so on and so forth, until we started calling him out on networks like this, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I support it, I'm good, I support. No, we got to keep the fire up, because just because you're Democrat, it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to support us.
Right.
We got to keep the fire to them as well, and we got to make sure that going into these midterms, we got a good chance, man. I hate when people say that, well, the opposing party generally wins the midterm. You're going to tell me after an insurrection, after all of the stuff that's going on with a twice impeached president and all of the ignorant things that they're doing in media right now with their misinformation campaigns and their anti-COVID policies and all of this, and critical race theory, quote unquote, banning, and the don't say gay bills and all of this, that they still have a shot to win at the end of the year? That should be nonsense, and it'll be nonsense if we make that the case.
You know, Julian, is interesting. I got some dude named Christopher Perkins on my YouTube channel page. He goes, symbolic bullshit, Roland. It means nothing. No reparations, no vote. Okay, Christopher.
What?
No, literally, that's literally.
Those crazy, Roland, those are those crazy ADOS people. They are really, truly unhinged, and they all need to be sent to mental institutions. Because and they're evil, they're vicious, they're probably gonna come after me again. They already threatened me a couple of times, and I'm still here. So bring it, y'all.
And let's be real clear, it ain't like you a newbie on the reparations thing.
No.
True that.
I've been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there since undergrad. And that y'all know that was like a few centuries ago. Just kidding. Somebody would take me literally. But the point is that these idiots, you can't say reparations or nothing. We have made tremendous progress with reparations. H.R. 40, as I mentioned earlier, now has 215 co-sponsors. NARC, the National African American Reparations Commission, led by Dr. Ron Daniels, has been doing yeoman's work. In fact, we're doing a town hall in New Orleans on Saturday. Sheila Jackson Lee has been a tremendous champion. The fact is that we got white folks now who are co-sponsoring reparations legislation. So we've moved it. But here's the other fact. We know that if it comes out of Congress, which it may, it's not going to go through the Senate, because you really laid out 50-50. You know Joe Manchin ain't going to vote for reparations. He won't even vote for voting rights. And so these people who say we won't vote unless we get reparations, then you want to be a slave. Then you really want to be a slave, because we know that Democrats are woefully imperfect, but they are exponentially better than the orange orangutan in his party. We have not gotten what we should have gotten from the Biden administration to date, but a show maybe a month ago, you laid out what HBCUs will get and stand to get through President Biden.
But also, Julian, a whole bunch of us who's sitting here running our mouths, we ain't done shit. We ain't called nobody, we ain't text nobody, we ain't emailed nobody, we ain't showed up at no damn town halls. And there's a whole bunch of people like, we ain't got nothing. What you gonna do, nothing?
But that's all, they are nothing. They are nothing, because the fact is, we know what politics is about. These people who don't, like you said, they didn't miss civics, they flunked civics. They totally flunked it. And you have black people walking around with their chest poked out about, I don't vote. Well, then again, you ignorant and you want to be a slave. That voting is our fundamental right. And without voting rights, there are no other rights. If more of us had voted and we had 53 in the Senate, Cory Booker introduced reparations legislation in the Senate, but we know it's going nowhere. Kamala, Vice President Harris, was one of the co-sponsors of the Senate legislation, but we know it's going nowhere because the Senate is ignorant. The Republicans in the Senate, their goal is to block anything Biden does. The tragedy here, Roland, is that when Mitch McConnell was leading the Senate and President Obama was in, he said his goal was to make Obama a one-term president. And every time Obama introduced legislation, he stopped it. Biden should have learned from that. He should have hit the ground running. There's so many more things that he could have done, but he is not a president at heart. He is a senator at heart. So he run around talking about my good friend. Your good friend does not want me to have voting rights. I ain't studying your good friend. And he wants to be Kumbaya Joe. Well, Kumbaya ain't gonna get it when we are in the war. As black people, we're in a war for our lives.
Look, I'm just going, and look, if y'all in Wisconsin, I'm telling y'all right now, Senator Ron Johnson got to go. Go to my computer. This is what that fool said today. GOP should be ready to repeal Obamacare if they take control of 2024. All y'all black people, guess what? the number of black people who finally got a health care because of the Affordable Care Act, tremendous increase. But some of y'all say that don't matter. Okay, again, go ahead, mess around, let these dumbasses get control of the U.S. Senate, and then let them get control of the U.S. House. And then come holler at me in 2023 and 2024 when nothing gets passed and they start having national anti-critical race theory bills, start banning books and all of the other crazy stuff they doing. But yeah, but y'all go ahead and keep playing around and see what happens. All right, y'all, got to go to a quick break. When we come back, another Supreme Court decision. Well, actually, they didn't even hear the case. Bill Cosby is going to stay at home, a free man. I'll tell you why next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, download our app. Every platform, y'all. We're trying to get to 50,000 downloads. I told y'all that's critically important. Then to get to 75 and 100,000, these things matter. When we go to those advertisers, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV, and of course, your dollars make it possible for us to cover and do what we do. So please support us. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037. That's for checks and money orders. For all of y'all who don't want to use any of the other vehicles, Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Back in a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Hello, everyone. I'm Godfrey, and you're watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered, and while he's doing Unfiltered, I'm practicing the wobble.
All right, folks, our black and missing, Karen Copeland disappeared from Glade Hill, Virginia on March 1st. The 16-year-old is 5'15" inches tall, weighs 190 pounds with black hair and black eyes. She has a scar above his, Karen has a scar above his right knee and, and his ears are pierced. Finding him is imperative. He requires medication. If you have seen Karan Copeland, you should call the Franklin County, Virginia Sheriff's Office at 540-483-3000, 540-483-3000. All right, folks, the U.S. Supreme Court has rejected a bid to reopen Bill Cosby's sexual assault prosecution. Today, the court left in place an opinion by the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court that overturned Cosby's sexual assault conviction. Cosby was convicted in 2018 for drugging and sexually assaulting a woman in his home in 2004 and was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. He was released from prison in June of last year after the state Supreme Court overturned his conviction, ruling his due process rights were violated by the new DA reneging on a deal that was struck with the previous DA. That particular deal required Cosby to give a deposition in the Andrea Constant case. So again, the Supreme Court doesn't even hear the case, and Bill Cosby will remain a free man. In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, folks, the police chief has been fired for allegedly practicing what they call reverse discrimination. Larry Scioto had been in office for less than a year, but was widely criticized for his approach to hiring and promotion by white people. Fort Lauderdale city officials believe the chief was unfairly focused exclusively on minority candidates. In one example, the chief bypassed a white officer with 20 years of experience to narrow the search between two men of color. Scioto allegedly explained that he decided by asking, quote, which one is blacker? That's what they claim. The former police chief calls the report vague on the facts and claims it was based mainly on hearsay. What's also interesting here, Jeff, is that he made a comment. He was looking at the hierarchy of the police department on the wall. He said that wall is too white. He said the city should be, the police leadership should be reflective of the city that we live in. Looks like a whole bunch of white officers were upset because he dared to actually give black and other minority officers a shot.
Yeah, that's what it is. When we talk about systemic change, we often think about putting people of color in positions where they're making decisions. And we've not always seen that that's an effective way to do it, especially if people are concerned with keeping the status quo. What this police chief said was actually quite impressive. He said, quote, if I die on the Hill for promoting diversity, as I was charged by the city manager to do from the day I was hired, then I will sleep well at night. We've got to have more police chiefs like this. We've got to have more people in office who are willing to open the door and to blaze trails so that we can truly see some diversity. It seems like he put his money where his mouth is and he put his decision-making in place, and we see what the system did to protect itself and close him back into that blue wall.
I keep trying to tell people, Julian, we're living in this age of white fear. You got white folks who do not like the fact that they now have to compete, and so it's like, how dare you? I've been here 20 years. That don't mean your ass good.
Especially for a police officer. You've been there 20 years doing what? What's your record? I mean, how many people have you beat? Because we know that's what they do. How many people have you illegally or improperly arrested? You know, you're absolutely right. That is beyond white fear. They are petrified because by 2040, our nation will be majority minority. Now, they shouldn't be that petrified because, as I said earlier, everybody brown ain't down. We can't count on not only our Latino allies all the time, but we also can't count on each other. 16% of black men, or was it 18? I don't know, some ridiculous number, voted for the orange orangutan. So, you know, when you look at that, they should not be but so petrified. But the fact is that they don't like the fact that we are here, that we've been here, that we're going to be here. The whole fight in the schools, and you know, as dean of the College of Ethnic Studies, I have to deal with this very, very often. Of this fight in the schools. They don't want to hear our stories, but the curriculum must reflect our stories. California used to be Native American Indian land. It used to be, part of it used to be Mexico. Come on, y'all. You can't deny that, but they would love to be able to deny it because if they tell the truth, then it refutes the fact that they're superior. When they tell the truth that we reduced the wealth gap, Roland, more between 1880 and 1910 than we have done between 1910 and now. In other words, formerly enslaved people were more successful because until they passed those Jim Crow laws, we were doing it. They don't want to hear that, and they're going to have to hear it. And kudos to this police chief for standing his ground about diversity, and we need more like him.
Makongo, the chief said, you know what, fine. The city said, no severance. He said, cool, y'all gonna get sued by me.
That's real talk. I mean, it might be out of scene from Do the Right Thing. I mean, he said, need more brothers on the wall, right? And quite honestly, everywhere we go across the country in every industry, all of the efforts to fight diversity or fight the improvement of diversity are being challenged. I'm seeing it in the school systems where I work. I'm seeing it in the government groups where I work. You're talking about all white people on the wall. And what are you talking about as it relates to community relations about the police? And he was not only just looking for black candidates, which is what everybody likes to just throw out there because race always takes primacy in terms of people getting upset first. He wanted to diversify it in terms of sexual orientation as well, with more members of the LGBTQ plus community as well. And so if you're really interested in building strong rapport with the community, you want to make sure that you have people that look like the community, or at least, even if your community is all white, you still want to have diversity of representation in there because they can also serve as people who are going to be educators within the community. And this is DeSantis' country, Roland, and so we are going to see more of this. I mean, when you look at everything that's going on in Florida, as we talked a little bit about the school and the Don't Say Gay bills and the critical race theory, protecting the police department is right in line with everything else DeSantis is doing. And we have to support this officer in terms of what he was attempting to do and support other officers who are attempting to make their departments look more like the communities that they serve. And this is not a fight that is going to be won easily because we know that the police unions are probably on the side of those who fired him, right? And so we have to keep raising attention about this, keep raising awareness. And I hope he gets paid seriously with that lawsuit.
Absolutely, folks. Look, going to a break. We come back. Selma. Yesterday was the 57th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Vice President Kamala Harris was there speaking. We were there as well, covering it on the ground. And we'll show you what was said, and we'll talk about the continuing battle for voting rights in the United States. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, everybody. This is Jonathan Nelson.
Hi, this is Cheryl Lee Ralph, and you are watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
All right, folks, yesterday in Selma was the 57th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. You might recall in 1965. It was the battle for voting rights in this country. And it was the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson that sparked that, where people, where he was shot and killed by state troopers there. People then began to protest, and then that marked what took place on the anniversary yesterday of Bloody Sunday, where they crossed that bridge. And they were viciously attacked by white racist state troopers there in Alabama. What resulted in that was a massive call for people all across the country. Thousands came to Selma, and then that led to the historic Selma to Montgomery March that ended with Dr. King speaking on the courthouse steps, his famous "How long, not long" speech. And every year, folks, there at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after a white racist KKK leader, there's a reenactment of the crossing of that bridge. It takes place. It is one of the places where people go. This is a video shot yesterday there. Thousands of people were there. It was a very warm day there. You can turn some of the audio up some, please. It was a very warm day. You had, of course, a number of people actually had to be tended to by EMT because of the warm weather, but we had an opportunity to see so many people who were out there. Like I say, every single year they have events there. And of course, they have this. So what, of course, and what we did, again, like I said, we're talking to a lot of different people there. A number of dignitaries were there as well. You had Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., Reverend Al Sharpton, Derek Johnson, CEO of the NAACP, Selma Mayor James Perkins, of course, folks from Black Voters Matter, Cliff Albright, Latasha Brown. You had the family of Ahmaud Arbery was there, his mother and father. They were there as well. Attorney Ben Crump, members of the Congressional Black Caucus were there. A number of people from all over, and we are so appreciative. We saw many of our supporters of Roland Martin Unfiltered who were there as well. A lot of people who were stopping me, telling me that they are contributors to our Bring the Funk fan club, like this woman right here. Also, folks, there were the foot soldiers. On that day, on Bloody Sunday, some 600 people crossed that initial march, and a number of them are still alive. They were, of course, there, some of them in their wheelchairs. Freedom Singers, the SNCC Freedom Singers, they were also there as well. Got a chance to see some of them there. Folks, the big attraction was Vice President Kamala Harris, who spoke to the crowd. Before she spoke, I had an opportunity to catch up with her backstage. Here is that exclusive interview with the Vice President of the United States. All right, then. So how you doing?
I am well.
Got out of the bubble?
She got out in Selma, back in Selma.
Right.
And here again, this year's a little different, of course, because the great gentleman is not here with us. But thankfully, we're able to all be together now with masks and actually be present, walk on that bridge to rededicate ourselves to our fight.
On that particular point, there are so many people. I were live, they got the comment. A lot of people are frustrated. You're like, this didn't pass. George Floyd just didn't pass. The people didn't pass. What do you say to that person who says, look, I did what I was supposed to do in 2020. I'm not going to sit here and go in 2022. What do you say to that person who is not really focused on voting come midterms?
Well, I think that it's a fair question to always ask, which is why should I vote? So I get that. Well, when everybody voted in 2020, they said deal with the issue of child poverty in America. So we extended the child tax credit, which is going to lift almost half of Black children out of poverty. They said take care of the problems that we're having when we've lost our job through no fault of our own in the pandemic. We got those $1,400 checks out. For our Black and minority and women-owned small businesses, they needed relief. That relief came. When we look at it about HBCUs, you and I have a particular interest in personal experience with that. I'm a proud graduate of an HBCU. We are putting billions of dollars into HBCUs in a way that is historic in terms of an investment in our future leaders and in our historical institutions. You look at it in terms of what we have done to appoint more Black women to the federal bench than ever before in the first year. And we're about to, because of the president making that promise, which he is fulfilling, we're about to put the first Black woman on the United States Supreme Court. The first in 233 years of its existence. So things have happened. Now, has everything we want happened in this first year? No. And we got to keep fighting. But one of the ways that we fight is to vote. One of the ways that we express what we want is to vote, because voting is about who's your congressperson, who's your senator, who's your mayor, who's your governor. And, I got to stress, you never want to let anybody take your power from you. And one of the ways that we have power is to vote.
Are you also looking to get far more active? I know people are hearing from you directly, because that's also a a part of this issue here. We look at communicating those things on a consistent basis with audiences, whether it's on black radio, whether it's in newspapers, whether it's in digital operations, talking to millennials as well.
No, absolutely, and I'll tell you one of the frustrations that I experienced last year in particular, the first year being in this office, was the COVID restrictions really did impair our ability to be out, to go into community, to be with folks, to sit down and talk to folks one-on-one. Now, thankfully, we're at a point where just in the last week, we now have gotten rid of so many of these restrictions. I can see your full face, Roland Martin. I mean, I think that's a good thing, right?
Like we were at the Howard Hampton game. I said, "Hey, Madam Vice President," you were like,
right.
You were like,
wait, right. Exactly. I remember you were there, and well, that's Roland. Somebody said, and I was like, okay.
That's why I went ahead and shirt, just so that way people know.
Just in case, right? As long as I can read, I know.
There you go. There you go.
Let's do one more.
So you make it easy on you. So I want to talk to black men. Black women obviously were extremely active in 2020. But there have been an increasing number of black men who are walking away from voting for Democrats. What do you say to brothers out there who say, I don't hear Democrats speaking to me, I don't hear Republicans speaking to me, I'm just going to walk out of this process?
So, one of the things that I know is that black men feel strongly and deeply about their ability to create, to build, and that they have the ambition but not always access to capital, money, investment in what they're thinking of doing. One of the areas of focus for me has been, even when I was in the Senate, it continues to be putting, I worked on getting $12 billion into our community banks, which are about giving access to capital for black-owned businesses to start and to grow.
Like we've been fighting the black-owned media advertising piece. I know exactly. We've been battling that.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal because I've talked to many black men who want to start. They have a creative idea. They have a thought. They are entrepreneurs, and then go to a traditional bank, and they're told this word, you're unbankable. But that's not the case in the community banks. But we want to deepen the assets that community banks have to be able to do that because those banks are in the community. They understand the culture. They understand the fabric of the community, what the community wants. The other piece is what we've done with the bipartisan infrastructure, right? That's about creating jobs that are good-paying jobs, union jobs, that are about carpenters and electricians and people who are trained with science and with engineering and math, those kinds of things. It's about making sure that people have access to the things that allow them to not only survive, but to thrive and to grow. And so those are some of the areas of focus. It's about HBCUs, and it's about criminal justice and what we need to do. We weren't able to get the bill passed in the Senate, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that I helped write. But what we are doing is through the Department of Justice, stopping carotid holes, choke holes, requiring cameras for federal law enforcement. But we still have a lot more work to do.
Right.
But the thing that I want to make sure of is that none of us take ourselves outside of having the power to make things happen. And one of the ways to make things happen is to vote. And I never want to see a day, and I want to do everything that I can to encourage and remind folks that among the many powers you have is the power to vote. When you vote, things happen, and we do see change. It may not happen as quickly as we want, but we do see change.
All right, and we appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks a bunch.
Roland.
We'll see you.
I'll see you later.
Indeed. There were, of course, a number of people who also spoke yesterday. And so here's a roundup of some of their presentations.
I want to remind us, there's nothing that has been brought into the physical world that was not first envisioned. Nothing. And so if we are to create a world that is free of racism, if we are to create a world that all human beings fit valued and respected, I didn't say you had to like them, but to feel valued and respected, it is going to take us to have the courage to have a vision to radically reimagine America and see the kind of nation that we desire and we deserve.
Selma was about a movement, and the first mass meeting was in 1963, 2 years ever before the Edmunds-Pettus Bridge. May of 1963, 3 or 4 months before the March on Washington. Miss Boynton and others. And then after they left here, many members of the delegation at the Emmett Pettit Bridge, they also joined the Poor People's Campaign. Amelia Boynton was at Resurrection City with poor people, and you too. She said, me too. They wanted me to tell you that Selma is not about us a day, it's about a declaration. And the declaration is, our deadline is victory. No, what the Democrats say is not our deadline. What the Senate chair says is our deadline. When it comes to our voting rights, when it comes to living wage, when it comes to health care, when it comes to protecting the environment, our deadline always has and always will be victory. We don't stop until we win.
I used to come here with Reverend James Orange when I was a student at Clark College, now Clark Atlanta University. We would come to Selma when the cameras weren't here. Every year. My sister Deborah Scott is here from Clark Atlanta. And we'd walk that Emmett Pettit Bridge and SCLC, Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry and Mrs. Lowry, and Bernice and Martin and Andrea. We'd walk when there wasn't no cameras. I'm going to say it again. We'd walk that bridge that we're going to do today. Why? Because our freedom to vote has never really been the freedom to vote. One of my mentors, Corey Berry, would say, they're just loaning it to us, y'all. Because every 25 years, we have to go through reauthorization to enforce it. So I see all these young people out here today, and it warms my heart, because I've been coming out here since decades now. And the bottom line is what's happening in this United States of America had happened to our predecessors who walked this bridge. John Lewis, Amelia Boynton, the names that you've heard of. So today, we're here to walk that bridge. And why are we here? Why are we here? Because we want our right to what? We want our freedom to what? We want our right to what? We want our freedom to what? Last thing I'm going to say is when I think about the fact that we have our first black woman, South Asian woman, vice president, give her a hand for showing up. 2 years ago, I was here on the other side of that bridge with now President Biden, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. But at the end of the day, we are not going to let them steal our vote, are we? So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Stand up. Stand up. Stand up, Lee Sanders. Stand up.
If we lose democracy in America, we lose all over the world. So we fight for democracy in Ukraine, we fight for democracy in the south of our own country. I want high school students to listen to the high school students. I want every high school senior to come across the stage in May and June, the diploma in one hand, the voter card in the other. Chicago, running a mayor, Lightfoot again, and in that city, 25,000 high school seniors who graduate. Diploma in one hand, voter card in the other. 160,000 junior college students. Everywhere you are in America today, make sure your high school seniors register and vote. High school diploma should be about part of the ritual. High school diploma and voter card. And what do you have to offer them? Well, if you register and vote, you can serve on juries. You have access to college. We fight for free access to junior colleges, community colleges around the country. We win the Senate, we get that bill through.
We cannot out-organize all of these repressive laws that they are passing. But we can overcome them if we have a movement. That's why when we leave here today, we will do the first 3.5 miles of the Selma to Montgomery March. And then each day, they'll do 10 or 11 miles, and then on Friday they'll do another 4 or 5 miles. All of this is moving toward movement. Now, it is critical that we broaden our movement.
Are you here to raise good trouble? That's what all of us must do. No, 57 years ago, folks marched on this bridge, sacrificing, getting beaten up, standing up for their community, standing up for what was right back then, and it is what is right now. Voting rights, human rights, civil rights, labor rights. We are here to commemorate that day. But we are also here to do more. We are here to have a call to action, not only here in Selma, but in community by community, block by block, city by city, state by state. It is time. It's time for all of us to come together and do what we do best. A commemoration, but a call to action.
It was at this moment, 57 years ago, that America was reminded that justice and equality were moral absolutes. And can't you hear John Lewis say, good trouble? Good trouble. Though every commemoration is special, this year it feels undeniably different without our beloved colleague, friend, mentor, and my friend, Congressman John Lewis. And yet we must find comfort in knowing that his spirit and great works live on in us, and his legacy will endure through generations. The seed that was sowed 57 years ago gave rise to the election of President Barack Obama and Vice President Kamala Harris and the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson. It was because Rosa sat that we can now stand up and speak out for justice. It was because of John Lewis and the freedom fighters dared to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge that I, as a little girl growing up in Selma, Alabama, could one day dream of representing this great city in Congress.
We gather here on hallowed ground. It was a chilly Sunday morning, 57 years ago, when 600 brave individuals set out from Selma. They were marching for the most fundamental right of American citizenship, the right to vote. They knew that if they wanted true freedom, if they wanted to claim what was theirs by birth and by right, they had to march on this bridge on that day. They were prepared for the worst. And on this bridge, on that day, the worst found them. Their peaceful protest was met with crushing violence. They were kneeling when the state troopers charged. They were praying when the billy clubs struck. On this bridge, on that day, those brave marchers continued to push forward to secure the freedom to vote. And they were pushed back. Today, we stand on this bridge at a different time. We again, however, find ourselves caught in between injustice and justice, between disappointment and determination, still in a fight to form a more perfect union. And nowhere is that more clear than when it comes to the ongoing fight to secure the freedom to vote. A record number of people cast their ballots in the 2020 elections. It was a triumph of democracy in many ways. But not everyone saw it that way. Some saw it as a threat. And so, as powerful people have done many times in our nation's history, they launched an assault on the freedom to vote. Across the country, states passed anti-voting laws, laws that ban drop boxes and restrict early voting, laws that make it illegal to give food and water to voters who are standing and waiting in line, laws that, put simply, make it much more difficult for people to vote with an expectation that then we will not vote, undemocratic laws, un-American laws. And so last year, we all joined together, we locked arms and lifted our voices and fought to pass federal voting rights legislation. We brought the Freedom to Vote Act, and yes, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, to the floor of the United States Senate. And on the night of January 19th, every Republican senator in the United States Senate voted to block passage of this law. We are the ones who must protect the freedom to vote. And we must not stop there. Those who marched across this bridge, yes, they marched for the freedom to vote. They also marched for all the rights and freedoms that voting unlocks. They marched for economic justice, for social justice, for racial justice. And we must do the same. We must fight to ensure all the people of our nation, no matter where they start, have the opportunity to succeed. We must fight to move on why it matters. Just think, last week, President Biden made history when he nominated the first black woman, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, to the highest court in our land. The court where decisions are made about the constitutional rights and liberties and freedoms of every American to generational effect. And I'll tell you what I think you know. Judge Jackson is a phenomenal jurist with a record of excellence, a record that proves her commitment not only to public service, but to equal justice and equal rights. John Lewis was the embodiment of strength and resilience, the epitome of dignity, grace, and perseverance. As he stood here that day, you could see the body that carried him across this bridge all those years ago had become fragile. But the spirit that carried him was as strong as ever. John Lewis, well, he never gave up the fight. He returned to this bridge again and again and again. It is that clarity of purpose, that relentless dedication, that spirit, the spirit of Selma that we summon today. We will keep fighting. We will keep organizing. We will keep shouting. We will keep making good trouble. And we will march on until victory is won.
If we don't get it,
You know, Jeff Carr, as we continue rolling this video here, it's very interesting when I look at some folks who comment on social media, some of the other platforms, and they say, "Oh, this is a photo op. This is a waste of time." One of the things that drives me crazy is when we are unwilling to understand that if we don't force the annual conversation to continue about what happens in our community, well, no one else is going to do it. That's why we go to Selma every year. That's why we focus on what happens there. That's why we cover it, because, again, if we aren't telling the story, who the hell will?
Rituals are important. People's memory is important. History is important. It defines who we are. It gives us pride. And it doesn't have anything to do with any made-up notion of reverse racism or anything like that. The great August Wilson once said that the greatest path to universality is cultural specificity. So in other words, if you tell your story and you tell it right, it will inspire the humanity in people no matter what their shade or ethnicity or gender or orientation. When you think about what happened 57 years ago on this day, Jose Williams, Ashe, the great ancestor, John Lewis, Ashe, the great ancestor, knelt in a church with 600 people, said a prayer, and then began to cross that bridge. They faced 150 state troopers, sheriff's deputies, and even self-appointed people who called themselves the posse. And we saw the results of that resulted in a 54-mile, 3-day march for freedom that inspired so many people around the
You
world.
can switch also to my
put their money where their
computer
mouth
if you
was.
want.
So when we talk about remembering these things, I think about what it's like to stare down police. 32 years ago this week, I was student government president at Tennessee State University, and we had to empty a building out 2 by 2 like it was the 1960s. 150 policemen stood there in riot gear. And at 21 years old, it was the most terrifying sight I had ever seen. In the middle of that movement, John Lewis sent word. In the middle of that movement, Reverend C.T. Vivian showed up and sat on the floor as we were hunger striking. Diane Nash showed up, and they told the next generation, keep going, because this is what we did 30 years ago. This generational passing down of this wisdom is inspirational. Is voting enough? No. We've got to vote as a foundation, but we also have to build institutions. We also have to stand up and speak out, and we also have to pass this memory down so that people never forget what we've actually been through and what the sacrifice of the elders and ancestors were.
There were some people who literally were on our feed yesterday asking, what is Bloody Sunday? That's why we can't just go, oh, okay, that thing happened, so it's really no big deal.
You know, Roland, our knowledge of history is broken because so many elders, parents, don't want to tell the painful story, but the painful story is like fuel for the movement. And so the stories have to be told, people have to be taught, people have to understand. And we're not just talking, I mean, the 1965, when it happened, it was within my lifetime and yours and others. I mean, this is not, this is not enslavement. This is not way back when. This is very recent. Just like the murder of George Floyd is very recent. And so when our young people don't know that, then they really are de-energized. That's why some idiot from ADOS could send you a note saying, no reparations, no vote. Because they don't understand this is what we paid for the right to vote. Dr. Meyer used to always say, we have already been paid for. The right to vote was paid for with John Lewis's skull, with all these people who were beaten and killed and dog bit. And so anyone who says they don't want to vote, I don't even want to talk to them. But the historical memory, it's like the young people about 10 years was calling it Malcolm the 10th because they didn't know what Malcolm X was. And that's just nonsense. Back in the day, and Jewish people do this, they have schools, they have Sunday school or Saturday school. When Saturday schools, they learn history. If our history is not going to be taught in the regular schools, which it must be and we must fight for, but we must also teach that history. And if we have to start doing Saturday schools again, let's do it. Some of these ancestors are leaving us. You know, Reverend Jackson is ill. He's not, he's there and he's going to be there. But how long are we going to have him? And there are others like that. So these people are leaving us and we've got to get their stories.
You know, Omokongo, when we were yesterday, I was looking at some of the folks who were marching, and it was very interesting because we were, so just so everybody understand, we were on the riser. We were on the riser, and we were on this flatbed truck. And so there were other media who were there. And so at the outset, when they were milling around trying to figure out how to get organized, and nothing was really happening. So I started talking to the camera. And so I started recounting, you know, look, Bloody Sunday, this is what happens, this is an annual deal, how Hank and Rose, they're the ones who keep this thing going, having this Selma Jubilee every single year, not always getting the support that they actually need. They do this crossing, people look forward to it because it is an annual ritual, to Jeff's point. And I was standing there and we were live streaming, and if y'all hear the live stream, y'all might hear me shouting out several people. And there was a white reporter who was in the next truck, and he was like, he says, Roland, you know, who's that guy standing right there? And I said, man, that's Jamie Harrison, ran for the United States Senate in South Carolina, who runs the DNC. Had no idea. Oh, well, he looked familiar. And they were standing there talking, and then I was talking, and I said, folks, the guy you see on the camera right now in the black hat, I said, that's Bernard Lafayette. I said, he was the one who Dr. King sent to Selma as part of the advance team to put the report together so they can know what the lay of the land is before they get here. And that's Annie Pearl, who is in that wheelchair right there. And that's Rose, who is right there. And again, sitting here pointing out all of these different people to Julian's point. I mean, the reality is in the past when we've gone to Selma, we've seen Reverend Congressman John Lewis there, and we've seen Reverend C.T. Vivian there. We've seen Reverend Joseph Lowry there. But see, they're not, all of them are all now ancestors. Mm-hmm. And so, in fact, one of the folks who was there for Selma 50, Bob Moses, who was a SNCC leader, we lost Bob Moses, became an ancestor last year. And so that's the other thing. In fact, if y'all could go to Instagram, please, go pull up, I think it's Sherilyn Eiffel's Instagram page. I think it's Sherilyn Eiffel. Sherilyn took a picture with an 85-year-old black woman who was the nurse who tended to Jimmy Lee Jackson. Mm. When I was there for Selma 50, I ran into this brother, and he was the one who was in the car when Viola Liuzzo had her head blown off as they were driving down the highway, and he played dead. The only reason those white racist Klansmen were arrested because of the three in the truck, one of them was an FBI informant who then told on them. The point is, when you're there at these events, you're literally meeting living history. So when I hear some of these silly ass people say, oh man, these events are a waste of time, to Julian's point, Jewish folks have a tradition where they literally go over their history. Every single year. The children have no choice but to learn the history. And they don't just start with the last 5, 10, 20 years.
You're absolutely right. And the model for many in the Jewish community is never forget. And we need to have that in our mindset. Look, people talk about, oh, y'all coming together for a photo op, it's just symbolic and so on and so forth. But let's remember, you started this particular segment by talking about Edmund Pettus. That name is still on the bridge. And that was built there intentionally 3 decades after this former Klansman and Confederate general died. It was built in 1940 as part of the whole Jim Crow thing, as a constant reminder that white supremacy was going to live. So every year after we do this demonstration and we honor our people who have fought, that name is still there every single year. And, and John Lewis is from Alabama. Edmund Pettus wasn't even from there. So they understand what representation and symbolism means. And so when you talk about that story about Viola Luoza that you just told, I didn't know about the brother who played dead. I didn't know about the 85-year-old woman I mean, these stories have to be seared into our minds because they will keep us active. They will keep us focused. These other folks who built the bridge, they have no problem with maintaining the memory, but you're saying people are talking about what is Bloody Sunday. And so I commend you, Roland. I'm sitting here watching this segment, and a note on these journalists. Yeah, you're saying these journalists are asking you, who's this, who's that? Because all they do is study journalism. They study no history. So if they would have, they could have spent the whole day out there like you did, Roland, and they could have never got the stories. They could have never pointed to the people and said, this is that, and this, and that is why, going back to your first story that opened tonight, Black-owned media matters, because no one's going to get the stories. No one's going to tell the history the way we can tell it. Nobody's going to know the names the way that we know them, and no one's going to be able to call out the ignorance as they see it. So I commend all of the people who get out there every single year to keep this going. I commend the young people who are out there, as Melanie Campbell talked about as well, because when we sear it in their heads, they're going to be continuing this long after any of us are no longer here.
So I'm just going to close with this. And I appreciate working with Jamal Simmons, who's the Director of Communications for Vice President Kamala Harris, for getting me on the plane in the press pool. I was the only African American. There was a brother who was a photographer out of Birmingham, but there was no other Black journalist from DC who was a part of the press pool to cover this. That's first. Second of all, the other reason why it's important for Black-owned media, normally when the vice president or the president speaks, they only, if you go to whitehouse.gov, you will see the remarks of Vice President Kamala Harris. They normally only cover her remarks or President Biden's remarks. They don't cover all the other speakers. We learned that when then Vice President Biden did a rally in Georgia for Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, and they had us in a camera position that was far off, and they were like, well, we're covering on Joe Biden's website, and we're on the website, and I'm going, what the hell? We don't see it. So Portia Coleman, Jermaine Dupree had spoken, and some others, and so I was like, what the hell are y'all doing? You got all these damn cameras out here. You're live. Press the goddamn button. Don't just show Biden speaking. Yeah, I did have to cuss out folks. And they hurry up and they did that. And so same thing. I asked them, I said, hey, are y'all streaming this? They said only her remarks. And so the only reason y'all saw all 17 speakers is because we were there. Mm-hmm. People were texting me saying, hey, I'm not seeing this on any network. I'm like, yes, any mainstream network. But Black Star Network was there. And I'll go ahead and say it. There are other Black-owned media companies larger than us. Urban One, Black Enterprise, Blavity, Byron Allen's company. They weren't there. And what but mainstream media will cover the hell out of these 1,000 truckers. Not 4,000 or 5,000 Black people in Selma, but 1,000 truckers. But I'm going to give y'all this here. This is the last point, and my guest is on the next segment. Thank you for being patient. So it was interesting because when you're part of the press pool, they sort of have you roped in, and you can't really move without a handler from the White House. Okay, so y'all got to understand, I don't like handlers. I don't like anybody telling me I can't walk nowhere. So I was giving them fits. Because when we got there, I go into the riser, and yeah, for all y'all, I was the one shooting and live streaming. They had one seat, okay? So boom, that's how that happened. I know how to work. So I'm sitting here, I set all of my gear up, set it up, boom, press live, waiting for the vice president to start. So I'm walking around. Now y'all might be asked, now they were like, well, sir, you can't move around. I'm like, yes, we can. Why? Because all those people who y'all saw, and I think I showed the video. Y'all don't have that video, do y'all? Is it on my computer? All right, I'll walk over here. I'm gonna keep talking. I was shooting this video, y'all, because I don't believe in VIPs, Black VIPs, going to events, standing behind walls, and never go and talk to the people. There were gates that were out there. that was separating folks from the rest of the people. Y'all, well, that's not how Uncle Roro works. And I'm a firm believer in you go where the people are. And so I was doing that. So I was walking around, talking to people, doing stuff. And if you turn on audio, you'll hear it. And so, you know, shaking hands, taking selfies. And then there were several points where the Secret Service kept telling me, need to get behind the gate or get in the press pool, which was like the secure area. And I was like, no, because I needed the Secret Service to understand that these are the people, and I told them, these are the folk who watch me every day. These are the folk who send $1 and $5 and $10 for this show. I'm not gonna come to Selma and be bougie and stay in the VIP section and behind the gate. I'm gonna go shake hands, talk to people, and it was a trip because I was sitting there taking selfies, and the look on their face was like, who the hell is this dude? In fact, one of the White House folks said, man, are they here to see you or to see the Vice President? And at one point, Reverend Jackson and Dr. Barbara and others they saw me and they were calling me over. They were like, well, you're gonna have a handler with you. I said, look, man, y'all are cripping my style. I said, I need y'all to understand, y'all in Selma for this one event, I deal with these people every day. And so I'm gonna move and talk to folk. And so finally, they kind of got the message like, okay, we gonna, like that sister right there, she said, Roland, I send my money to the show. The reason I'm saying that, y'all, is that's the other reason why you got to show up to Selma. Because black folks who watch us should never only touch us by touching the TV. And so that's why it's important as well. And so when black-owned media is on the scene, then people are getting the real story. And that's the thing that people have to understand. And so, folks, I want to thank everybody who we saw out there. Thanks for all y'all support. And again, it was great being a part of the pool. But I just told them, y'all gonna have to back up a little bit because y'all ain't giving the brother enough room to do what he do. And so it was great, again, to share the story and to tell the story as well. All right, folks, I got to go to a break. Don't forget, folks, why you must support black-owned media, because that's what allowed us to be able to go to Selma yesterday. It's a bunch of other stuff that we would love to be able to cover, travel with the Vice President. I would love to have a White House correspondent, to have somebody who's a part of the pool, who's covering stuff every day. But see, it doesn't happen without resources. That's why we're going to continue to press this issue when it comes to black-owned media and advertising. Now, as long as there's breath in my body, I'm not relenting. Because I will never apologize for calling folks out when $322 billion is being spent every year and black-owned media is getting 0.5 to 1%. That simply is unacceptable. Download our Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. And again, support us, joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans annually to contribute $50 each. That's $1 million a year. If you can give more, great. If you can't give $50, you can give less, great. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. This is why we do what we do. So folks, again, a lot of folks may have sent in 20, 25, 10, 5, even $1, and we thank you for every single dollar that's been given. Again, you can send checks and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Coming up next, Fit, Live, Win. We talk about yoga with an African twist. I'm sure Jeff at Omakongo can't wait to stretch. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Back in a moment. All right, folks. Every Monday, we've our Fit, Live, Win segment where, of course, we talk about health issues, not just working out, but not just diet, but different ways to improve your well-being, your wellness, if you will. And one of the things that a lot of people are really doing is yoga. They are, now there's some people who are freaking out like, oh, does that mean all of a sudden I'm no longer a Christian? Yo, chill out. No, calm down. All right, yoga is known, of course, for meditation and healing properties. My next guest, they're a husband and wife. They created a way to incorporate movements and music from the African diaspora into yoga. Afro Flow Yoga promotes healing individually and collectively by connecting us to our roots. The CEO and founder is Leslie Salmon Jones, and the COO is Jeff Jones, again, of Afro Flow Yoga. They join us now from Massachusetts. Where in Massachusetts?
We are in Boston.
All right, then. All right. Certainly appreciate it. All right. So Afro Flow Yoga, where did it start? Where did it come from?
Thank you so much, Roland, for having us on your beautiful show here. That was an amazing segment on Selma. We were at the opening of Ava DuVernay's movie years ago for Selma, which created new information for the younger generation. So we appreciate that and everybody's work.
Yeah, so thank you for having us on, and thank you for the amazing work that you're doing. So you asked where we are and how AfroFlow got started, and we often say it started with the ancestors. We're sitting here in a house that's been in Jeff's family for 108 years. And we've been married for 25 years. And when 3 of our parents passed away in the 2000s, early 2000s, we decided to learn more about our ancestry. Jeff, his family, they can trace back to an enslaved young girl who came into Wilmington, North Carolina. And I was born in Toronto of Jamaican and Scottish-Irish descent. We have a book very thick about our Scottish-Irish roots, but 3 of my grandparents who were Jamaican, we didn't know a lot. So we traveled throughout West Africa in 2007. We went to Ghana, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, and Benin, and stood in the slave dungeons to really understand, first of all, number one, to answer the prayers of our ancestors, because if you're stolen from your home, you're going to pray to go back. And second of all, to really learn about the methodologies and the dehumanization process of like how such a strong people can be broken down. And that was a science. So we learned about the science. And then through prayer and meditation and doing our own healing journey for 2 years, going to Haiti, Jamaica, and throughout the Americas, to really, really connect to that trauma within ourselves. The vision of Afro Flow Yoga came through me, and then Jeff with all the instruments, which he'll tell you about, and learning that yoga has been in Africa for thousands of years.
So it's not, Jeff, an Eastern thing, an Asian thing, as people often say.
Right, and what a lot of people don't know is like there was such a migration and a sharing of wisdom and knowledge between Africa and India, and so there's a really beautiful sharing, and you'll see in Egypt on the hieroglyphics there's so many amazing scholars who are doing this work, and you can see the yoga postures on the hieroglyphics, and it goes into the spiritual practices that are actually connected also to Christianity at the root, so you can see the beauty in the connection to all.
Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, you got this Jeff.
No, not Jeff Carr, Jeff Jones. I'm gonna come to you, Jeff Carr, in a minute. Jeff Jones, go ahead. She was talking about the music, instrument.
Yes. Well, the music we have back here, we've been virtual for 2 years, although we've been doing work. We were just in Costa Rica, in Nosara, for 5 weeks, where we were at Blue Spirit, working with a lot of psychologists and trauma healing folks. The music back here, I have a djembe that I brought back from Ghana. I have congas. I have a choli lira instrument back there. I won't get out of the camera here, but I also have, we play other instruments. I have my bass here. This is a bass that my dad played with Billie Holiday. And as you can see, that was my dad playing that bass back in at Storyville here in Boston in 1959. That was one of her last gigs. So music's been in my family. My grandmother was an organist, and my parents met in her church, where she was a choir director for many years, Church of All Nations in Boston. The other instruments I use, so we integrate the voice and the music, and we have quite the dynamic of being quiet and then also raising the energy and bringing in the fire and the deities and Shango and all the other amazing deities as far as Yemaya. And as far as the other instruments go, so I have a kalimbas that I also play, but it's integrated with the yoga. So yoga, Kundalini and Vinyasa yoga is connected with, we also bring in a lot of the spiritual jazz to our practice, whether it's John Coltrane, so many, I mean, even Earth, Wind, and Fire type things are so healing, and along with the yoga, and of course with African drumming.
And Negro spirituals.
The old spirituals, yeah.
Jeff's played in many churches, so we incorporate the diaspora.
Yeah, having toured for many years and supporting many vocalists and playing in show bands and traveling around and playing in church, and whether it's clubs or nursing homes or wherever, you know, it's all about healing. People are come to heal, to hear the music.
Well, I've got a couple of my panelists who are big time into yoga. Jeff Carr, Makongo Dabinga, Julian Light. Now I ain't doing all that. But all three, I'm sure, have comments or questions. Jeff Carr, start with you.
Yes, sir. First of all, thanks, Jeff and Leslie, just for everything that you're putting into the world and the dots that you are connecting with the culture, with health, with holistic living, with history. It's just a beautiful thing to behold, and I want to send a shout out, congratulations to you. People who study Pangea and ancient history and understand how the continents were together at one point, understand that whole Dravidian history of India and the connection between that and Egypt. So you all are exuding that in a world of cultural appropriation where you've got Vinyasa, then Bikram. Now they have goat yoga. Now they have Jesus yoga. The evangelicals are doing Jesus yoga now. I think it's an amazing thing to witness what you're doing. I'm pastor of a church where we actually do Yoga Sunday. We're the only church that does a Sunday service dedicated to yoga. So one thing that I wanted to pour back into you and ask about is for those of us who have been practicing a while. I've been practicing about 15 years. I've been teaching about 4 years. How can people train with you all? Have you reached a point where you're bringing people down to study and you're equipping teachers? And if not, is that something that you're doing in the future?
Yeah, thank you. And so exciting about your journey, to hear about your journey. And it sounds like we have a lot to share and in common, so we appreciate that. Yeah, so we actually created a teacher training program because a lot of the information initially really directly came through the ancestors. So as you said, this information, this wisdom and knowledge has been here. It's within us, within our DNA, our cells. So we've been, over the years, able to, so I've been practicing, actually I came to yoga through Alvin Ailey. I'm a trained dancer. And in 1991, yoga was a requirement. So Alvin Ailey was an amazing yogi. He was a visionary on so many levels. So, so bringing in the diaspora, it's really, the insertion of that is hard to find in Western yoga now. So we created a curriculum after years of study and doing research and gathering papers and of the history of yoga in Africa, the history, the connection to the healing of dance and music, the spiritual practices that have been interconnected. And we're not denouncing any spiritual practice. We're opening it to connect so that no one has to denounce. And then the practices, the actual practices, and the yamas and the niyamas. And then we get into community healing, because that's really oftentimes a missing piece. We do bring a lot of the indigenous practices into our yoga practice. So it's done in a circle. So we're connecting heart to heart. We're feeling the roots of each other in the interconnection of each other, as opposed to being set up in a grid system and having our shutters on. So we do the individual and the collective.
Omakongo.
Well, yeah, this is exciting. Greetings first of all, from my sisters, Musa Mwadi and Shaumba Debenga. They work with y'all. Yeah, so with y'all at Ailey and everything, and they said make sure I say what's up, and I was gonna do that anyway. So I just want to commend y'all. I mean, the love is just, y'all are just doing amazing things. And my wife and I, we have our hot yoga studios down here, and so on your way to Nashville to check out Reverend Carr, make sure you stop by us first and we get some sessions in. We'd love to have you as part of our community down here, and just it'll be awesome. The question I have for you, it comes from your website. One of the things I noticed, because with our studios, we're also committed to social justice, and you have a spot on your website specifically talking about racism.
Yes.
What led you to do that in this area of yoga, which we know in the West is white dominated and everything? I mean, what was the intentionality behind that? Because I just feel like it's so amazing that you did that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's been really out of a need. As you mentioned, pre-COVID, in so many yoga studios, there was just like not an awareness at all, and almost as if people were in a post-racial society and just no connection, which was causing a lot of trauma for people of color who would walk into the studio and there would be microaggressions, all kinds of things. So when COVID happened, we went virtual right away, and that opened up to global community. Really, we had people from all over the world, which meant they were coming from different places of consciousness, different skin tones, all kinds of cultures. And so then when the racial pandemic, after the murder of George Floyd, so many people just swarmed to us looking for answers. And we found really three situations. One situation were the people who had no idea there was racism, right? That's like, oh my gosh, there's racism, and they're awakening to it right now. So we said, okay, well, let's just go over here with the history, like got some homework to do, because there's history, and you got to learn the history. And they're people who really actually were where they were. Then there were the people who knew and wanted to be really active and allies. So we're like, okay, go on this track with the anti-racism work. And then there are our folks who are closest to the pain, who need the healing and need to be in a place where they're really being heard and held. And so that's our healing of our roots. Okay. That's that.
We've been working with Reverend Liz Walker also. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She was a news anchor, one of the first black news anchors here in Boston. Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of trauma and healing with her. And Leslie's one of Leslie's first yoga teachers. His father had been a yogi in Africa also.
Yeah, well, yeah, so...
Hold on one second, because I'm literally running out of time. I got to get in Julianne. You can finish that, but Julianne, I got to get your question in.
First of all, I love the way y'all look, and I love your energy, and I might try your yoga. I wasn't going to try Omakongo's with that hot stuff, but I might try yours. So thank you so much. Thank you. My question is, how do you get to yoga? I mean, I'm not that still. So if that's my problem with yoga, is you have to be too still.
You mean how to slow your butt down and calm down?
Well, yeah, that could be it too.
All right.
I did have a meeting with somebody else today who said just exactly that. When you go calm down? I'm like, I don't know.
I got about 60 seconds. Who wants to take her question?
Well, we have our classes on Sundays and Thursdays live since we've been virtual. We're already booked again for Costa Rica next year.
Yes.
And we'll be down there for 3 or 4 weeks, but we have other things that we'll be doing throughout the year in different states.
Yes. And how you can slow down and get to yoga is when you come, we'll teach you. But really, with the music is really something, another element, the live music, that helps people calm, get out of the head into the heart, into that embodied practice. And it's for every level. So when you come in, we'll take good care of you. And you don't have to, it's a non-judgment environment.
All right, then. First of all, give the website, please. People want folks to get more information.
AfroFlowYoga.com. AFRO. Don't forget the flow, like the water. FLOW. Yoga.com. And we have virtual classes, teacher training, retreats coming up, and we'd love to see you. It's for all levels and ages.
All right, then. We appreciate it. Thank you so very much, Leslie and Jeff Jones. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, before we go off, some breaking news. The United States Senate has passed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. It was a vote of 422 to 3, 422 to 3. Again, remember that had been blocked for quite some time by Rand Paul of Kansas. It passed the House last week, and now the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act has been passed by the U.S. Senate and now goes on to President Joe Biden for his signature. Folks, tomorrow we're going to hear from Education Secretary Miguel Cardona about his visit to Selma, but also about education in Selma and the Black Belt. That's tomorrow. And also, a couple of weeks ago, journalist Askia Muhammad passed away. His memorial service took place on Saturday. I got a chance to stop by, say a few words, and also record this gorgeous song that was done by Ayanna Gregory, one of the children of Dick Gregory. We're going to have that for you tomorrow as well, as we pay tribute to Askia Muhammad, who passed away at the age of 76. And we'll also share some of the content we got in Liberia when the Congressional Black Caucus arrived for their meetings with the president of Liberia, George Weah. That's all that tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. If you missed any of our coverage of Selma, you can go to the Black Star Network app. You can see the entire program, hear all of the speeches, check all of that out as well. And so please do so. Again, folks, support us in what we do. Download the app, Apple TV, Android, Apple, and Roku. Of course, phones as well, Amazon Fire, Xbox, Samsung TV, and of course, join our Bring the Funk fan club. You can see in checks and money orders to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037. Cash App is R Martin Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Jeff Omakongo, Julian, thank you so very much for joining us. We appreciate your participation. Folks, I will see you guys tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And don't forget, we keep the fight up, not only for our people, but for the money.